Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Madison, Bloomfire's Customer Marketing Manager, and I'm very excited for the conversation we have lined up for you all today. Whether you're a longtime Bloomfire customer, someone actively evaluating your knowledge management options, or just curious about how other organizations are making these decisions, you're in the right place. Today, Aaron Messner, Process Improvement Manager at Lessen, is going to walk us through what it actually looks like to put your knowledge management platform under a microscope, including a head-to-head evaluation against SharePoint. So before I hand it over to Aaron, a few housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded, as always. You'll receive an on-demand link shortly after we wrap, so you can revisit the discussion at your convenience and even share it with your team. We'll also want to hear from all of you. Whatever questions, thoughts, anything that you have, please feel free to use our Q&A chat to drop your questions or thoughts at any time in this session. We'll follow up with answers following our session. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. So, Aaron, thank you so much for being here. I'd love to start by giving our audience a little context about who Lessen is as an organization and what you do there before we dive into this evaluation story.
Yeah, really happy to be here, Madison. So a little background on Lessen. We're a technology company that connects property managers and real estate investors with service providers all across the country. It means we have a really large distributed workforce, which means getting the right information to the right people quickly is absolutely critical to how we operate. And my role as process improvement manager means I'm constantly looking at how our internal systems and workflows can be made more efficient. Knowledge management sits squarely in that wheelhouse because when people can't find what they need, it creates bottlenecks, it generates repeated questions, and it just kind of slows everything down. Ultimately, it degrades our workforce productivity and can undermine our team's overall confidence.
Yeah, that context is very helpful. So thank you for that, Aaron. And it really sets the stage for why this evaluation you all went through at Lessen was so critical and so impactful. This wasn't a surface level review. It was really about making sure your platform could truly support your actual business needs and doing what it was supposed to. So let's talk about how that started. I'm curious what prompted the evaluation in the first place.
Yeah, it started with a directive from our procurement team. We were looking at cost-saving opportunities. SharePoint came up as an option since, like many companies, we already have that as part of our Microsoft 360 licensing. So the logic was, if we can consolidate platforms and reduce spending, why wouldn't we? Which was, a good thought. But we didn't want to just react to a cost signal. We really wanted to be methodically rigorous about it. So the first thing we did was go directly to our department leaders and ask them what parts of the current knowledge base experience are actually valuable to you and your teams. What's really working. Search kept coming up over and over again. The ability to find information quickly, not just by file name, but by the actual content inside each document was cited as one of the more important day-to-day capabilities our people relied on. Alongside that, our department leaders were also really vocal about the support they'd gotten directly from Bloomfire. That hands-on partnership really mattered a lot to them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what I'm hearing is that the evaluation started with a cost-saving directive, like you mentioned, but you and your team were very intentional about not letting cost become that only lens, the only sole focus for you all. Instead, you went back to the people actually using the knowledge base and asked what capabilities were most important to their day-to-day work. And it sounds like two themes arose from that pretty quickly. So search, especially the ability to find the information within the content itself, and the level of support and partnership your teams were getting from Bloomfire. So you had a clear sense of what your users valued before you even started comparing alternatives. How did those insights translate into the actual evaluation framework?
Good question. We started by getting our learning and development team together, and we built out a spreadsheet, essentially a feature matrix that listed every capability we could envision needing in a knowledge-based platform. We then categorized each of those feature items as either, a quote unquote must-have or just a like-to-have. So after we put together that matrix, we gathered a list of about 8 platforms that had some pretty strong online reviews and peer recommendations. Then we reviewed each of those platforms' website and compared to our feature matrix, mostly the must-haves, and then a quick estimate of pricing, which narrowed it down to 3 finalists. After that, we wanted to make sure that we were forward-looking, so we looped in our product team to assess compatibility of those 3 with our AI roadmap, and then we dug in a little bit deeper. And that whole process took about a month and a half.
Yeah, I love that you involved your product team in thinking about AI compatibility, because that just shows you were really evaluating this through both an immediate operational lens and a long-term strategic one. You weren't just asking, can this platform meet our needs today? But you all were thinking and asking, will it support the business on where we're headed as an organization? It sounds like your team approached the evaluation in a really disciplined way, which is, again, exciting to see too, defining the must-haves versus nice-to-haves, narrowing the field based on those requirements, and then bringing in additional stakeholders to kind of pressure test the decision against future priorities like AI. With that in mind, what were your top priorities heading into the evaluation?
Our I guess ultimate North Star was surfacing accurate knowledge to our users as quickly as possible. Everything else really just flowed from that. So practically speaking, that meant the platform needed to be easy to access and navigate. It needed powerful and intuitive search. It needed to make it easy for our subject matter experts to maintain content quality. And we needed robust analytics so we could understand user behavior, where we were succeeding and where we were falling short.
Yeah, those are 4 really foundational pillars, and they're honestly the exact areas where we see the biggest differentiation between platforms, because at that point, you're not just evaluating a place to store documents, you're evaluating whether the platform can help turn knowledge into those usable enterprise insights, something people can actually find, trust, act on, and improve over time. That's especially important as organizations think more seriously about AI, because AI is only as valuable as the knowledge layer underneath it. If information is fragmented, outdated, duplicated, or hard to govern, it becomes much harder to surface those reliable answers or scale intelligence across the business, as you know. That aligns closely with Bloomfire's enterprise intelligence perspective. So connecting those knowledge pools, improving certified knowledge through health and reporting, capturing that tacit knowledge, injecting knowledge into the flow of daily work, and proactively surfacing insights from both structured and unstructured sources. So with those priorities in mind, again, that fast access, trusted search, content quality, and analytics, that brings me to the more difficult part of the story, I guess you could say. What did you actually discover about SharePoint when you got into it?
Yeah, I want to start by saying that we were trying to be very impartial in this evaluation. We really wanted the best platform to win. We did not want SharePoint to fail. We genuinely just really wanted to be objective. But what we found was pretty consistent with what we'd heard anecdotally. And in some areas, it was unfortunately worse than we anticipated. The most glaring issue was search. We already use SharePoint as a document repository for templates and internal working files. So we had some real world experience with using it. And candidly, the search results are just, they're not good. You're often searching for something and getting back results that have almost nothing to do with what you were looking for. We even kicked around the idea of building and embedding our own custom search experience using our internal AI, just to try to make it workable. And I think if you have to build something custom for that, it really it tells you something.
And for an organization where surfacing accurate knowledge quickly is the core goal, that's a pretty fundamental problem, I would say. Search is really that front door to enterprise intelligence. If people can't reliably find the right answer, then the value of the knowledge base breaks down before they even get to the content. And what's interesting is that this also connects directly to the broader SharePoint challenge we hear from a lot of teams. It may work well as a document repository, especially for those work in progress files, but that's different from being a trusted intelligence layer for the business. Bloomfire's enterprise intelligence framework really emphasizes the need for a clean, certified knowledge layer that supports enterprise-wide search, audit-ready content, moderation workflows, and knowledge health checks. Again, not just that file storage. So once you realized search wasn't going to meet the bar, what else came up in that same evaluation?
I think another critical piece of the knowledge base that we foresaw some issues was going to be content governance. In Bloomfire, we have a process where the platform flags contributions that haven't been reviewed in 6 months, marks them as expired. And that's really critical for us. We need to make sure that our content is current and accurate. And in SharePoint, you can see a last modified date on individual files, but you can't really generate a report that shows all that content that's beyond a certain point, hasn't been updated in X number of days, or however you want to filter that. The functionality just doesn't exist out of the box. Identifying and collating expired content would have been really difficult, nearly impossible.
And I'd imagine that has real downstream consequences. If you can't easily identify that stale content, it starts eroding user trust in the platform over time. People begin to question whether what they're still reading is accurate. And once that trust breaks down, they either stop using the knowledge base or they start recreating old habits, asking the same people the same questions, saving their own copies, relying on tribal knowledge. I mean, you name it, all the things that you really don't want as an organization, right? That's a major issue for organizations, because the value isn't just in having information available. It's in knowing that the information is, again, current, governed, and appropriate for the person accessing and viewing it. A knowledge platform has to support both confidence and control. Confidence that the answer is accurate, and control over who sees it based on what their role is, their team, or business need. Mm-hmm. So beyond content freshness and governance, Aaron, how did SharePoint hold up when it came to permissions and audience management?
I think this was going to be another pain point for us. We have a lot of content that is similar, but different in really crucial ways. The information may look nearly identical at a glance, but it needs to be presented to different audiences based on their role, department, or specific business context. We service over 280,000 properties, so it's incredibly important that we apply the right policy to the right location. In Bloomfire, we can solve for that by building groups, publishing content strategically within those groups, and giving members a way to manage their own access. That allows us to pre-filter the experience, so users are seeing the knowledge that is most relevant to them without forcing our team to manually manage every access request to different locations for published content. With SharePoint, we would have had to recreate that structure through separate pages or sites, and users would not have been able to manage their own access as easily. So even if we could technically get the content into SharePoint, maintaining the right permissions and keeping the experience organized would have required a lot of ongoing manual administration. For our small but mighty team, that would have introduced more complexity, more maintenance, and a higher risk that users either couldn't find what they needed or were looking at content that wasn't meant for their specific use case.
So at this point, you're seeing limitations across several core areas: search, content, governance, and permissions.
Mm-hmm.
And what stands out to me is that these aren't minor feature gaps. These are the capabilities that determine whether a knowledge platform can actually be trusted and adopted at scale. I'm curious about reporting, because you mentioned analytics as one of your top priorities going into the evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
That feels especially important because reporting is what turns knowledge management from a passive repository into something you can actively improve. Without visibility into what people are searching for, what content they're using, where they're getting stuck, or where searches are returning no results, it becomes really, really challenging to understand whether the platform is truly meeting the needs of your team. How did SharePoint hold up when it came to analytics and reporting?
It's going to be another major limitation. SharePoint's reporting felt restrictive and wouldn't have given us the actionable insights that we needed to understand how the knowledge base was actually performing. For example, we would have lost visibility into things like audience-specific content views, popular searches, zero result searches. Those are important because they tell us not just whether people are visiting and using the platform, but whether they're actually finding what they need, which content is resonating with different groups, so we can try and tailor our content to meet their needs, and find out where those needs aren't being met. Where are the gaps in our current knowledge base? Without that level of reporting, it would have been much harder to know where the platform was succeeding, where it was falling short. It also would have made it difficult to evaluate whether moving to SharePoint had been the right decision in the first place. We really would have been, taking a leap and then just hoping that it was paying off. We would have had less insight into user behavior, fewer signals to guide future improvements, and less confidence that the platform is actually supporting our teams the way we needed it to.
That last point is so important because you need the data to evaluate the decision you just made, right? So without it, you're losing visibility into platform performance and the ability to prove whether that the change actually improved the experience for users. And I think this is where a lot of organizations underestimate the true cost of these trade-offs. It's not just about the license fee or whether a platform is already included in a broader tech stack. It's about the operational cost of reduced visibility, the administrative burden on your team, and the impact on employees when they can't quickly find trusted information. So, Aaron, you've painted a pretty clear picture of what SharePoint couldn't offer your team. When you put the two platforms side by side, what were the key differentiators that reaffirmed your commitment to Bloomfire and really drove that point home that Bloomfire was the right platform to use and continue using in the future?
Yeah, honestly, felt like when we put the two side by side, the story almost told itself. But I guess if I had to pick the top differentiators, search, certainly number one. The feedback from our department leaders on that was pretty overwhelming. They're using the platform every day and they know what a good search experience feels like. Bloomfire search is genuinely powerful. It surfaces relevant content. It's intuitive. It works the way people expect it, and really need it to work.
And I think that's something people underestimate about search until they've experienced a bad one. It's the entire user experience. It really is. If search fails, the platform fails.
Mhm.
So it shapes whether employees trust the platform, whether they come back to it, and whether they can get the right answer without interrupting someone else. It shapes whether, and when search is working well, it reinforces the value of the entire knowledge base. It helps people move faster, reduces those repeated questions, and gives teams confidence that the information they need is actually accessible. Beyond search, what else stood out as a key differentiator for Bloomfire?
I think that the second big differentiator was content management, specifically around expiration and governance. The ability to set expiration timelines, get automated notifications when content needed review, the ability to pull up a full list of those expired contributions is something that we rely on pretty deeply. It's how we maintain a high quality and more important, or almost more importantly, trustworthy knowledge base. Bloomfire really makes that easy. And we saw some ways that we could really fall short with that in SharePoint.
And then there's the group and access structure you mentioned. Can you talk us through a little bit more about how that plays out in practice?
Yeah, sure. We have a lot of content that's similar on the surface, but different in ways that matter a lot depending on who you are in the organization, your role, your region, your team, the client you're assigned to, that kind of stuff. We service financial institutions, healthcare, education, residential facilities, restaurants, just to name a few. And we've got a pretty good customer satisfaction. Our customer satisfaction scores are like 4.8 out of 5, and we get that high customer satisfaction score by ensuring that the right policy is applied to any given situation. Being able to set up groups in Bloomfire with different levels of access lets us publish the right content to the right audience, and it lets us manage our users in their groups, and lets the users actually manage their own access to a certain degree. That self-service model is really important to us because it keeps the administrative load off of our knowledge team.
Yeah, self-service is such a theme here, both for end users and for your team. What about the broader organizational impact? You mentioned that department leaders' feedback was ultimately what drove the decision. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that? Expand on that.
Yeah. We could have made the case to stay with Bloomfire purely on the features on offer, but that really wasn't the deciding factor. The deciding factor was our users. Our department leaders came back with really clear, really consistent feedback. The people using the platform every day are getting what they need to do their jobs well. They trusted the search. They trusted the content that they were finding. They were engaged with that content. We know that when people are engaging with content, knowledge retention goes up. You just have better outcomes with all of that. So changing that behavior when we changed the platform, asking people to adopt and adapt to the new system with honestly a worse experience, it would have been a massive cultural and operational undertaking. And for what benefit? We would have seen some cost savings, but we just really couldn't justify the loss of features just to save some money.
In that human element, the trust your users have in the platform is something you can't put a price on, but you absolutely feel it when it's gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about what it would have actually cost you to make the switch. I know you did some real math here, and I think these numbers are going to be eye-opening for a lot of people in our audience who might assume that consolidating to a tool you already license is, quote, free.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about, cost savings when comparing to SharePoint so far, but this is kind of a point that gets missed, and it might be where the conversation goes a little sideways for some organizations. They see, it's included in our Microsoft license and assume the cost is zero. But you have to switch platforms. So it's not just the cost of the platform. The cost of the platform is never just the license. It's the implementation, it's the migration, it's training, it's all the ongoing maintenance. All this stuff really adds up. So to make sure that we were getting a true comparison, we did a real estimate, converting all of our content from Bloomfire to SharePoint. The actual migration work would have taken approximately 665 hours. I did a few conversions and averaged out the time, and then applied that to our total amount of content. That's where we came up with that 665 hours. And then standing up the SharePoint site itself, it's not like Bloomfire where you get a good usable system right out of the box. You really have to build it. And it would have required around 80 hours of my time, and then another 8-ish hours from our IT team. And then finally, you got to tell people how to use the new platform. As well as I could have designed it, it would not have been as user-friendly and intuitive as the Bloomfire platform. So creating those training documents, communicating to our users what those changes were going to be, probably would have added another 40 hours on top of that.
So you're looking roughly at about 793 hours of just implementation work alone, right? Before anyone has even used the new platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's significant. And so those are just the upfront costs, correct?
Yep, that would have just been, before anybody had even accessed a single piece of content on the SharePoint site. On top of that, there were going to be some ongoing, maintenance, quote unquote costs. SharePoint requires real IT involvement to configure, maintain, and troubleshoot. We would have had to manage permissions, manage the content structure, troubleshooting search issues. They don't really go away after launch. They become recurring costs that pull your most valuable internal resources away from the really strategic work that you want people working on. Comparing that to Bloomfire, where the platform is genuinely designed for business users, our knowledge team can manage everything without needing to escalate to IT. That's a meaningful ongoing advantage.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. The cost of a platform isn't just what shows up on the invoice. It's also the time, the resources, and internal expertise required to keep it running well over time. If your knowledge team has to rely on IT every time they need to adjust permissions, restructure content, or troubleshoot usability issues, that creates a very different operating model. And what I'm hearing is that Bloomfire gave your team more ownership. Instead of turning knowledge management into another IT dependent workflow, your team could really manage the platform directly, make those improvements faster, and stay focused on the strategic work of keeping knowledge accurate, accessible, and useful. But beyond the platform itself, you also mentioned the partnership side of things as a major differentiator. You have a dedicated customer success manager with Bloomfire, which you would not have had with SharePoint. Can you talk about what that relationship actually looks like and how it supports the ongoing development of your knowledge base?
Yeah, with SharePoint, you're on your own. There's no dedicated person who understands your knowledge base, your use case, your goals, who can proactively bring you insights and recommendations. SharePoint, you have some forums, I suppose, that you can visit online, but there's no like actual person to talk to. As with Bloomfire, we have a dedicated customer success manager who we meet with monthly, and who we can reach out to whenever we need. In those monthly sessions, we get an overview of the product roadmap, so we know what's coming down the pike. We can plan ahead. We get usage metrics that benchmark our community's performance against similar organizations. For example, we learned that from December to February, our engaged user rate was 75%, which for comparable companies with our use case, it's about 10% higher. So we get to feel pretty good about the platform, and know that it's being used to its utmost. We also get strategic guidance on where we can improve, and we have a person that we can actually call when we run into challenges. That relationship has directly contributed to the quality and accuracy of our knowledge base.
That 75% engagement rate is pretty remarkable. And I think it just speaks to exactly the kind of outcome that's possible when you have the right foundation in place. So not just the right technology, but the right partnership strategy, ongoing visibility into how the platform is performing, truly the whole package, if you will. Let's close out with some advice, because I know our audience is full of people facing similar decisions. Some may be evaluating knowledge management platforms for the first time. Others may be under pressure to consolidate tools or consider SharePoint because it appears to be the lower cost option, at least at first glance. Aaron, if you're speaking directly to someone in our audience right now who is evaluating knowledge management platforms, what do you want them to know?
The first thing I'd say is listen to your users and your leadership before you listen to your budget. Changing knowledge behavior and culture in an organization takes, frankly, enormous effort. You need to meet people where they are. Before you evaluate a single platform, go understand your users' current experience. What's working, what's frustrating, what they wish was different. Then find a solution that addresses those actual needs. And if it's your current platform, great. So once you've put all of those, the good stuff, the bad stuff, and documented those needs for each level of user, you just really need to make sure that you document that stuff. From the end user who's doing a search every day, to the department leader who's relying on reporting to understand team performance, to the knowledge administrator, myself, I guess, who has to maintain that quality, that content quality. When you walk into a procurement conversation, you should really be able to show those decision makers exactly why the platform you're recommending will be impactful from day one across all of those levels.
And what would you say to someone who might be hesitant to go through a formal evaluation process? Some people worry it'll just create doubt or open the door to budget cuts.
Yeah, I completely understand that worry, but I think I'd actually flip that. I think I'd say going through a rigorous evaluation and coming out the other side with a clear, documented rationale for your choice is one of the most powerful things you can do for your program. We didn't just keep Bloomfire by default. We kept it because we earned the confidence to say, we looked at the alternatives, we did the math, we heard from our users, and this is the right decision. That's a really, that's a completely different position to be in. That's a whole different level of confidence.
Yeah, that's a very powerful reframe. A competitive evaluation isn't just, or it isn't a threat to your platform choice.
Right.
It's a validation of it, like you just mentioned. And Bloomfire just recently released our 2026 Guide to Enterprise Intelligence Systems. So that's a comprehensive framework for building the knowledge foundation enterprise AI requires. And within it includes an independent evaluation of 12 platforms across knowledge management, enterprise search, and business intelligence. So as a quick plug, we'll include that link within our follow-up, and I'll post it in the customer community for you all to have that at your fingertips as well. Aaron, this has been an incredible conversation. Any other advice or consideration you want to leave the audience with today?
I think the most important thing that I want people to hear is that we ultimately made this decision because of our users. Our end users were getting the experience they needed to perform their jobs well. We could have absorbed the added administrative burden, the reduced functionality. We could have made it work, but it would have been really pretty hard to provide the same level of service on SharePoint as our users currently experience. And I think our people knew that. Protecting that experience was worth more than any potential cost savings, for sure.
Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing Lesson's knowledge management journey. To everyone who joined us today, if this conversation resonated with you, we'd love to continue it. Whether you're in the middle of a platform evaluation, thinking about starting one, or just looking for ways to strengthen your knowledge management program, our team is here to have that conversation with you. Aaron, any final words, final thoughts before we part ways today?
Don't underestimate what a well-functioning knowledge base means to your people. When it works, it's almost invisible. But when it doesn't work, everyone feels it. It's really worth getting it right.
And as a reminder, we'll be sending out today's recording so you can revisit or share this discussion with your team. And if you have any questions or want to explore how Bloomfire can help activate knowledge within your own business, again, we'd love to connect. We'd love to have that conversation with you. So thank you again, and we will see you all next time.